Paramita Hridaya Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion from the deep practice of prajna paramita perceived the emptiness of all five skandhas and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness, form. The same is true of feelings, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feelings, no thought, no impulses, no consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind. No realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out from suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds nothing but prajna paramita. Therefore, the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance, there is no fear. Far away from all perverted views, one reaches nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna paramita, attain the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna paramita is the great Dharani, the radiant, peerless mantram, the ultimate supreme mantram, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Now proclaim the highest wisdom of the prajna paramita. Gate, gate, para, gate, par samgate, bodhi swav. Gate, gate, para, gate, par samgate, bodhi swav. Gate, gate, para, samgate, bodhi swaha. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Good morning. Beautiful but brisk Sunday morning. May all your bulbs sprout up nicely and start to bloom. My tulips are this big. Yes, spring is here. Spring is coming. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, tech team, for making this possible. Today I'm going to talk about Dogen. If any of you have read Dogen, you know we're in for a treat, because Dogen is, I'll say, treatful. Shobo Genzo by Dogen, his big book. I was reading a chapter called The Reality of All Things. This piece was written by Eihei Dogen, who was a Japanese monk that lived between 1200 and 1257. And he's the main teacher of the Socho Zen, the group of Socho Zen. And if you've not ever had the pleasure of reading Dogen, it's not an easy read, but you'll always find something wonderful there, or not. When I read this piece a while ago, I was so excited. every single line was like a bolt of lightning. It's like, yes, I can't wait to say a Dharma talk about this. This is just perfect. I put it away. A couple weeks later, I picked it up and I read it, and it was just word soup. And I thought, wow, no sense of what was going on, no connection. And I asked myself, what was it about something I read 2 weeks ago that was so perfect? And then I picked it up and it was absolute gibberish. I thought it was found a little irony in the fact that it was called, the chapter is Reality of All Things, because both readings were perfect realities and both readings were valid, but they were so different. So I picked it up again and reread it. Like you do with every Buddhist text, when you don't understand it, you pick it up and read it again and again. And eventually it'll start making sense. So I picked it up and read it again. It's a pretty dense chapter. As I said before, it kind of goes without saying it's Dogen. Dogen is a very dense writer. And this chapter talks about reality. And spoiler alert, Dogen doesn't give us a clear, concise answer. I'm going to start with a story from Old Path White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh. There was a young man whose wife died and left him with a young son. The man was so torn with grief about the death of his wife. And he was so in love with his son that he wouldn't let the son out of his sight. He clung to him strongly. One day, the man had to take a short trip and he left the son alone and home alone. And while the father was gone, a group of thieves came and burnt the village and murdered almost everybody in it. The son was kidnapped. The father did not know that the son was kidnapped. But the son did survive. The man came home devastated. He looked for his son, couldn't find it, found the body of a charred child out by his house, which was still standing. He took the child, had him cremated, did all the burial things, put the ashes in a bag, and held the bag next to his chest. And he wept, and he cried, and he grieved. A bit later, the son escaped from his kidnappers, came home, knock, 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 knock. Dad, it's me, let me in. The father was so overcome with grief that he just clutched the ashes of what he thought was his son to his chest. Knock, 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 knock. Again, Dad, it's me, let me in. The father thought, surely you're just somebody mocking my grief. He would not believe that was his son, and he kept clinging to his ashes. The last line of the story is, the son walked away crying, never to be reunited with his father. Reality. The act of not seeing true reality, what we think is real. The father thought he was clinging to his son. He was clinging to nothing. His son was at the door knocking, Dad, let me in. And I thought, I do this so often. And it hurts. So I reread the Shobogenzo chapter. What does Dogen have to say about reality? And sometimes when I read Dogen, it sounds like just a bunch of annoying Zen speak. You know, those things like, what's that? Oh, it's the sound of one hand clapping. No, I meant, what kind of bird is that? You know, I want an answer, not some cute Zen saying. And sometimes Dogen is just, I just want an answer. So we reread it until we hopefully can start to understand the profound meaning of Zen teachings. Read it over and over again. That's why we chant the same things every week. Because every time we chant the Heart Sutra, we may hear it a different way. I mean, it's not like, oh, I've read the Heart Sutra once, I don't have to reread it. We do it over and over again. There's a lot of places in Buddhist writings and our chants that talk about reality, like the Heart Sutra. It says form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And then it goes on to chip away at our reality. There's no old age and death, but there's also no extinction of old age and death. We all go through old age and we all will go through death. So what does that mean when we're not supposed to believe our perception of reality? In my daily morning sutras, we chant something called the Sandokai, harmony of difference and sameness, where we say, in the light there's darkness, but don't see it as darkness. And in the light and in the dark there's light, but don't see it as light. This sutra is telling me exactly not to believe my eyes and senses. If I see light, you're telling me don't see it as light. What does that mean? And why do we every day chant, don't believe what you see? And the Shin Ming puts it very nicely. To deny the reality of things is to miss the reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. Somehow, this seeing reality, understanding reality is important. The Shin Ming also goes on to say, the more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. So stop talking and stop thinking, and there's nothing you will not be able to know. So if I was smart, I'd listen to the sutra and shut up. But I'm not. I'm going to keep talking. So back to Dogen. In this chapter, Dogen says, only a Buddha and a Buddha is the reality of all things. And the reality of all things is only a Buddha and a Buddha. I'm going to repeat that. Only a Buddha and a Buddha is the reality of all things. And the reality of all things is only a Buddha and a Buddha. Dogen went on and said, when you hear the word all things, do not assume it is one or many. When you hear the word reality, do not study it as void or original nature. Reality is only a Buddha, and reality is a Buddha. So what's being said here? I'm going to go back to the story that we've all heard, saying a Buddha will see ordinary beings and see a Buddha. Ordinary beings will see a Buddha and only see an ordinary being. We are all Buddha. When we bow to the fact, we don't bow to the statue. We bow to the fact that yes, we are Buddha. And we practice to become that Buddha that we all could be. So Dogen is going back to a Buddha and a Buddha is reality. As I was reading this over once again, I fell asleep. And I had this dream that I was on. I know everybody hates talking about dreams. I was on a train and I jumped off the moving train in full Hollywood fashion, rolling down the ditch, rolling down the grass into a ditch. And in the dream, I thought, I know the train is still going, even though I can't hear or see it. And that's Dogen's reality. And then I woke up. I'm not sure what Dogen would say about my dream, but I do know what one of my old teachers would say. If I would tell him about it, go, you're falling asleep reading the Dharma? You shouldn't be falling asleep reading the Dharma. But at the moment, that moment of sleep becomes wake, I understood everything. And it's just like, this is it. My heart, my gut, I knew what reality as a Buddha meant. Then I fully woke up and I thought, and it's all gone. But something when my mind, conscious mind, stopped trying to understand it, there it was. Stop talking and thinking, and there's nothing you will not know. That space between sleep and wakefulness, the mind was out of the picture. I knew what it was. The understanding didn't stay, but another story about that Dogen told in this chapter was Yuan once told a monk, if you want to make understanding easy, get to the place of arousing the mind and moving thoughts all day, continuously. If you have contact with these moving thoughts, you immediately understand what is not graspable. It is like the great void and no trace of void. It's like emptiness and form being the same thing. Front and back are one. Both the knower and the known are invisible. You and I were nothing. It's just the understanding here between us. Both implicit and explicit will perish. Past, present, and future are equal. And arriving at that state, you are called a leisurely person with no more studying and no more doing. I love that. If you understand this grasp, you become a leisurely person. Oh man, that sounds a great way of resting in your knowingness. And it sounded so logical. I'm reading this, it's like, yes, something in Dogen I can say, I understand it totally. So what does Dogen say after that? Yuan didn't get it. He didn't have perfect understanding, that the author got it all wrong. Dogen does this a lot in his writings. If you read him, you'll say, oh yeah, I know this. He'll say something that sounds so perfect. And he'll say, that was good, but it wasn't right. Then he'll explain why it wasn't right. And I think that's kind of good when you're reading, because it just keeps me from becoming a leisurely person. But also what Dogen said is, even though Yuan didn't fully understand it and he didn't quite mastering it, he was studying it and thinking, and that is good. It's a process we all go through. We study something, we think, it's like, yes, we got it. And then it's not right, but that's okay. As long as we keep studying and as long as we keep thinking, we're good. Only a Buddha and a Buddha is the reality of all things. And this reality of all things is only a Buddha and a Buddha. This appears to be the main point of the chapter. Dogen goes into deep Dogen-esque explanations of this. And I really didn't totally understand it, but I feel it in my heart and I feel it in my gut. And I know in a deep here that that's right, but I can't bring it up to my mind in a way that I can communicate it. But I think if we all sit with that, a Buddha and a Buddha is the reality of all things, we can all come to our own understanding of that. There's a lot of issues with not grasping reality. And right now we're seeing a lot of harm by the lack of firm grasp of reality, like in today's political system. And yes, delusion is the greatest poison of the three poisons. We can look at someone and say they have no idea of what's real. But I think Dogen's discussion on reality is a little different than me looking at the sky and saying it's yellow when it's really blue. This is something, you can't see, I'm pointing to my gut. This is something you feel in your gut, you feel in your heart. That reality. And it's something I can't explain. The Heart Sutra says there's no old age and death. There's also no extinction of old age and death. I look at myself in the mirror every day. I'm definitely getting the old age. And we're aging, body's changing, and someday I will stop breathing and my heart will stop beating. And that's okay. That's reality of life. And it's like when I'm saying only a Buddha and a Buddha is reality of all things, it takes that into the idea that, yes, at some point, I will experience even more old age. And at some point, I will also experience that unique human experience of dying. And that's okay. But also at the same time, there is no old age and death. And there is also no extinction of old age and death. That is the reality that Dogen's talking about. And those are the moments where I see the Buddha in me and the Buddha in you. And that's all that is. And nothing else matters. That's reality. I can look at each one of your faces and see you're a Buddha. And that is true reality. Why is this important? And why is it important to see and recognize these moments? I do not go through my whole life in this Buddha and a Buddha reality, because you can't function there. I have to get in my car, turn on the ignition, and pay attention which is the gas pedal and which is the brake, and which way to turn the steering wheel. That's equally as important. But we also have these moments of knowing, and we may not recognize these moments. Towards the end of the chapter, Dogen's told this story. The great master, Sui Sha, was on his way to the Dharma hall, and he heard a swallow's voice. And he went and did his Dharma talk and said, the Dharma talk was, a swallow's voice deeply speaks of a reality, and a well expands the heart of the Dharma. And then he got out of his Dharma seat and walked away. A month later came up and said, teacher, I don't understand it. Help me. And Zhuan said, go away, no one believes you. That is a very typical Zen story. Go away, no one believes you. Why is that a good teaching? The teacher knew the monk understood it. There was this moment of understanding there. Believe yourself, you understand it. You may not be able to verbalize it. You know those moments when you are a Buddha and a Buddha experiencing true reality. Be here now. My very first Zen lesson was pay attention, your life depends on it. And if you heard me speak often, I say that's my mantra. Pay attention, your life depends on it. You have this moment of Buddha and a Buddha experiencing reality. Yes, I understand the sparrow's voice. When I was at the Great Vow Monastery in 2014 for a study period, Chosen Roshi really wanted us all to sit outside a lot, experience Zazen outside. And it was on the edge, the monastery was on the edge of an old growth forest, so we had beautiful places to sit. One night, I went and sat in a bamboo grove, and a storm came up out there, laying on a tarp, because we're all in our full robes outside, laying on a tarp, and the storm came up, and first the leaves started like tinkling, bamboo leaves, just kind of, and then the top branches started bunka, 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 and then the wind picked up, and all the way down, you had the tinkling of the leaves, the bunking of the top, and then the lower bamboos were hitting each other and booming, boom, boom, echoing. I was lying on the ground, looking at the sky, the moon, the clouds, a few stars, a few drops of rain, smelling the earth, smelling the storm. All 5 senses were alive. The bamboo grove was telling me something. Don't know what it was. It was saying something very important. I've had a few very magical times of my life. This was one of those magic times. It was special. As the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi says, just to portray it in literary forms is to stain it with defilement. Nothing was said, no words. But that night, I heard so much. It was a Buddha and a Buddha reality. The next morning, Choshin Roshi came up and she said, she was out with her special tree. She said, wasn't that storm amazing? The trees were bowing to me. She said she'd never had an experience like that before with her trees. And that's where that was her special place. She always sat. The whole monastery felt it. There were probably 20 or 30 of us there. The next couple days, we were all really pulled into ourselves. What was said that night? A Buddha and a Buddha had a moment of reality. Who knows? Maybe it was just a dramatic pressure drop and we all had lightheadedness from big pressure change. Maybe it was the spirits of the land reaching out and saying, save us. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Who knows? But it was special. The reality of things, to grasp the reality of things is to miss their reality. I remember that night the same way I read Dogen. We don't have to understand everything we read. We don't have to understand everything we experience. But sometimes it feels good. That's my place where I keep those things. Keep it, and it feels good. Let's sit for 10 minutes in quietness and we'll have a discussion.